then you burst into fire. Forever.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Hilary.
And I'm Indigo.
And you're listening to The Full Blossom of the Evening, a podcast about David Lynch and Twin Peaks.
Listeners, we're going to tell it to you, and we're going to tell it to you straight.
Today, we're talking about
the little girl who lives down the lane.
It was Laura, and I saw her glowing. I saw her smiling. I feel like I'm gonna dream tonight.
First off, we just want to thank everyone so much. Everyone has been so supportive. Thank you to the other podcasts in this community that have been supporting ours and welcoming us. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you to our dear friend Evan, who made the incredible music that is a part of this podcast.
I mean, this is only a week since we released our first episodes and our podcast. And I think we have been overwhelmed with the incredibly kind, generous, supportive feedback we've received. So thank you to everyone.
It really means so much to us, and it made sitting down to record this second episode even more exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And although we said we were going to be releasing episodes about a month apart, there was such a long delay between recording those last episodes and actually getting the whole podcast thing going, because there was a big learning curve for us. So this one is coming out a little earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
So be excited.
And thank you so much.
Thank you.
So today we're talking about an illusion. This is an illusion episode. The phrase that refers to, the phrase, the little girl who lives down the lane, is mentioned twice in The Return.
Yes. Yeah, so we see this in part 13 and also in part 18. So we don't think it's just a little coincidence.
No.
Also, like on part 13, the title of that is "What Story Is That, Charlie?" So this is something that Lynch wants us to notice. Anyone who says this is a throwaway phrase, we just don't think that's the case.
No, because it's basically mentioned 2.5 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the first time is in this dialogue between Charlie and Audrey in part 13. So I think, should we just read the dialogue?
Yeah, and
Okay.
we're gonna act it out for you a little bit.
Okay, I'm not ready to be I'm not ready to act out Charlie, but I'll do the best I can.
Okay, yeah.
So Indigo will be Audrey because she cosplays a spectacular
I love
Audrey.
so much. I mean, we both love Audrey so much, but I have built most of my personality around her.
I love that. I have not built my personality around Charlie.
I should hope not.
But I do think he's a very cool character, and I do love a 3-piece suit. So, but anyway, okay, so I'll be Audrey, or Charlie. Okay, here we go.
Right.
You're supposed to go to the roadhouse and see if Billy is there.
I guess. Is it far?
Come on, Audrey. You know where it is. If I didn't know better, I would swear you were on drugs.
Just where is it?
I'm going to take you there. Now, are you going to stop playing games? Or do I have to end your story too?
What story is that, Charlie? Is that the story of the little girl who lived down the lane? Is it?
You're the one that wanted to go. Now you're looking like you want to stay.
Chills, folks.
That is, I think, the scariest line that Charlie says.
Yeah.
In this.
It kind of makes you do a double take. You're like, I'm sorry, you're gonna, what? You're gonna end her story?
Yeah. I think that, like, up until this moment, Charlie is such a passive figure.
Yeah.
He's sedentary.
Yeah.
He looks so small. in his little chair. He's like sleepy. I'm so sleepy.
Yeah, and also in comparison to Audrey, who's such this like force of nature.
Yeah, and she's so angry, and he's so and she's just openly telling him that she's cheating on him.
Yeah,
right. He's gonna take her to look for her lover, and so he's just in this really weird passive position. And then all of a sudden, he delivers this line. There's like so much menace and control in that.
Which, unfortunately, really tracks for the book that we're about to discuss. The book and film.
It does. It does. But, okay. Anyway.
Yes.
So then in part 18, we hear this line again. Should we set this up, or do we think our listeners know?
I think if you want to explain it, I think it could be helpful for folks that maybe need a refresher.
Yeah. So in part 18, it's like after Cooper has attempted to prevent Laura's murder, right? And she's like swept away in the woods. He loses grip of her hand. And so he's back in the Red Room. Philip Gerard is like, is it future or is it past? Cooper looks at the chair that Laura usually sits in. Then Philip Gerard leads him to another room, and the evolution of the arm is there. It's when the evolution of the arm does its, I am the arm, and I sound like this. And then it says, is it the story of the little girl who lived down the lane? Is it? He repeats Audrey's line.
Yeah.
Cooper's then back in the chair. Laura's whispering in his ear. He looks concerned and says, huh?
Yeah.
She screams and disappears.
Yeah.
So that's the second occurrence of the line.
Which, again, I think part of why I wanted you to really expand on that more, I think, too, is because, again, that just furthers our belief that there's a reason for this. Because that's a very important scene where we are taking in a lot of knowledge about the Black Lodge and things like that. And I think that in the Red Room, and I think that for that phrase to pop up again there is so important, because that's outside of like the real realm that we're getting that, and it is comparing Audrey to Laura in that moment in a way.
Also, we have so little dialogue in part 18 that it's almost like every word counts.
Yes, definitely.
And as you said, we get so little of Audrey in the return.
Yeah, so every word really counts in that space, and also from Audrey. Like, we can't take those as just throwaway lines.
Yeah. And we will, I'm sure, have more episodes where we talk about Audrey Horne.
We love her so much.
So much. But for now, we're concentrating on this line.
Yes. So
yeah, go ahead.
Well, so obviously there's a couple possibilities here. It's not like a completely obscure phrase.
No.
So one possibility, of course, the nursery rhyme. So do you want to?
Yeah, according to the Oxford Dictionary of Nursery Rhymes, in 1744, in Tommy Thumb's Pretty Songbook, we get the nursery rhyme, ba, ba, a black sheep. Have you any wool? Yes, old mate, I have 3 bags full. 2 for my master, 1 for my dame, 1 for my little boy that lives in the lane. Profound.
And then there's also the 1765 Mother Goose's Melody. It's pretty much exactly the same, except for that last line, which is changed to, but none for the little boy that cries in the lane.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's lots of speculation about the meaning of this nursery rhyme. So there was an argument made in the 1930s that it's about like a 13th century wool tax.
Yeah, but also, I mean, obviously there's commentary about it being a black sheep. It's like, is this about slave trade? Mm-hmm. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of things back then can absolutely be tied to that. So
sure.
Let's assume this is not the reference he's making.
Probably not. Like, we're not going to weigh in either way on what this nursery rhyme is about, but we don't think this is the most likely source of the illusion in Twin Peaks: The Return.
No, especially because when Hilary first brought this idea to me, I was unfamiliar with The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane, the book and the film. But the second that she began to describe the plot to me, I immediately just went, oh, yeah, of course it's that. Because up until then, I had just assumed it was sort of, the classic David Lynch sort of dreamy speak. I thought it was just a sort of way to talk about Laura, like, oh, she's this other girl in this story or something. I just assumed that it was just like a nod to Laura. But then as soon as I started watching the film, reading the book, it became clear that this is absolutely the connection.
Yeah. So the second possibility that Indigo's alluding to is the novel and the film called The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane. It was published in 1974, written by Laird Koenig, and he also wrote the screenplay for the 1976 movie that was directed by Nicholas Gessner and starred Jodie Foster and Martin Sheen.
Who are phenomenal in it.
Yeah.
All of the actors do an insanely incredible job inhabiting these roles, which unfortunately in Martin Sheen's case means that I'm going to be terrified of him forever now, maybe.
Now, unlike Lolita, our last episode, the novel and the film are very, very close to each other. Yeah,
Yes.
so we don't have to discuss big different. We'll probably discuss them more or less as one text.
Yeah, I mean they're really the few changes that there are quite small. The basis of the story is still pretty much exactly the same. So
Yeah, part of that is because Laird Koenig was a seasoned screenwriter, so he had already written movies, television shows. He kind of knew, even his novels are kind of paced and written as if they could be easily made into films, which is what happened.
Yeah, and we had discussed even a little bit that it has almost like a soap opera quality to it in some ways, which is very David Lynch style in general.
Yes.
The sort of over-the-top scenes sometimes.
So we'll give you a little bit of a synopsis of The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane. So we have a 13-year-old girl named Rin Jacobs, and she's living alone down a lane in a small town in Maine. She's originally from England, and she's lived all over the world with her poet father. When her father realizes he's dying, he tries to set Rin up to live on her own for 3 years. So they choose this house in Maine. He pays 3 years lease on it. He gets her a safe deposit box and stocks it with traveler's checks. She's not rich, but it's a moderate income. He gives her strict instructions, and I'm going to quote the book here. It says his instructions are to stay alone, stay out of trouble, and make herself very small in the world. He tells her, do anything you must, fight them any way you have to, survive. Then he, Rin's father, studies the tide tables and walks into the ocean at a precise time when he knows his body will never be recovered. And this is all before the story begins. So when we meet Rin, she's like a month into her solo life. She definitely has the resources, the skills, the seeming maturity to maintain a home and care for herself, and even educate herself, even though she's only 13.
Yeah, but what she doesn't seem to have is the ability to lock her door, which I mean, that sounds a little cruel, but there were plenty of times when I was first watching the movie that I was like saying to Hilary, is she not locking the door? How are these people getting in? Because almost every scene, it's somebody busting through the door, whether they mean her harm or help. But again, some of these are menacing adults. Her mother, the landlady, and a sexual predator named Frank Hallett. They just walk right into Rin's house and threaten her when she's just trying to live this quiet, safe, independent existence that also she didn't ask for.
Yeah.
She's just trying to make the best of it. So this is the conflict of both the film and the novel. It's Rin's struggle to follow her father's orders to survive as these adults with nefarious intentions invade. They're literally invading her space and trying to, boss her around or take advantage of her. And she does some terrible things to survive. There are two good people who try to help Rin. Like I said, some come to harm, some to help. There is a kind policeman and an adorable teenage boy with a limp who is a magician, Mario the Magician, which is just... It's so David Lynch vibes. Like when you watch it, when you read it, it's so endearing and it's so campy. Ultimately, though, both are unable to protect her from the psychopathic predator, Frank Hallett. But let's
that's enough to get us started.
Yeah.
So, I read the book before I watched the movie, and you did the opposite.
Yeah.
And when we first met to plan the episode a couple weeks ago, you had, I think, just watched the movie?
Yeah, I think so. And I had so many feelings.
But I immediately changed my notes because your first reaction was, oh, this film is so Lynch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, the thing was that I had also just recently rewatched Blue Velvet, and like I think maybe within the same week I did this. Or no, I think it was the same night.
Oh, wow.
I think it was the same night. I was in a movie mood then, and I decided to sort of back to back. I was like, well, I've been meaning to rewatch Blue Velvet, so why don't I do that? And so it was so fresh in my mind. And then when I saw Frank Booth, I was, even their names are the same. They're both Frank. And so it's when we see that like erratic nature, because Frank Hallett, like I said, he just bursts into the house constantly. He just jumps in and just starts moving around erratically, saying these bizarre things, very predatory things to Rin, invading her space, no respect. And every interaction we have with him, he's like giggling all the time. It's very bizarre behavior. And it reminded me so much of Frank Booth in that erratic way.
Yeah. And when you said it, I immediately thought, oh, wow. Because at one point, Frank Hallett comes into Rin's house, and as he's threatening her, he kills her pet.
And it's horrifying.
Oof, yeah.
But he does it with this like glee.
Yes.
In the same way that Frank Booth operates with this violence, but giddiness.
Yeah, so when you said, Frank Hallett is so much like Frank Booth, right away.
Yeah.
I had to go and rewatch Blue Velvet with that frame of mind. And absolutely, Frank Hallett does feel like a very Lynchian villain.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, he, again, it's that sort of chaotic quality. The way he moves into Rin's world is so chaotic, but violent.
Yes. Now, I mean, although the allusion to is in Twin Peaks, we agreed that the scariest Twin Peaks villain aren't really Hallett scary. They're not like Frank Hallett and Frank Booth. It's like Hallett enjoys being a predator the way that Bob does, but Hallett is very calculating and quiet as a stalker, plus he's very chaotic and gleeful.
Yeah, because with Twin Peaks, a lot of our villains are a lot more supernatural. They're kind of paranormal. But when we look at some of, David Lynch's other work, where we are seeing potentially more real life villains, like that's, again, like with Blue Velvet, we are given this very real possible villain. There are men like that out in the world, which is so true of Frank Hallett as well.
Yeah. So I think that seeing this film is like, oh, wow, this is very Lynch. Even though David Lynch has not said we're not aware of him publicly saying he's seen this film or whatever. it's pretty likely that he did and probably liked it.
Yeah, because the thing is, again, there's a campiness to it. There are moments that are very campy, very soap opera, that have kind of similar qualities to, like, the thing that he said about the scene in Lolita. Like, I think that there are a lot of scenes that I could totally picture him being delighted with.
Yes.
And also some that he could completely take as inspiration for some of the darker characters.
And of course, this isn't a minor film, even though it's not one that's necessarily seen that much now. I mean, we're talking Jodie Foster in the same year that she was in Taxi Driver.
Right.
Right? And a very different character. Just an outstanding performance, of course, in both films. Martin Sheen, like not a minor actor.
Right. And I mean, again, this is an incredible adaptation. There are so many minor details that once I started reading the book, I realized that they managed to capture, and you can tell that so much care went into this adaptation.
Yeah.
So if you're not a big reader, definitely at least watch the movie. I will say, I told Hilary within the first couple minutes, I was just clutching the cushions of my couch in fear, because it right off the bat just gave me chills. It was so heart-wrenching and horrifying.
Yeah, Frank Hallett is an immediately repulsive character.
Yes, just absolutely. Again, I'm not going to be able to look at Martin Sheen and not feel absolute dread, I don't think, which is kind of something that I've developed about Jack Nicholson in the past. So he's added to this new roster now.
Okay. Yeah,
Anything I
that's
see him in.
interesting. Yeah. So although we think that Frank Hallett is much more of a Blue Velvet villain than a Twin Peaks villain, right? There are some really interesting things that the little girl who lives down the lane and Twin Peaks do have in common.
Yes.
Right? And for one, Kelly Weston wrote an article in The Guardian about the film. This was in 2002. And she said of the little girl who lives down the lane that the film's most cogent missive is, quote, "Few things pose more harm to children than those tasked to protect them." I feel like that could also be a message of Twin Peaks.
Which is so heartbreaking. I mean, we see it with Laura, we see it with Audrey. Like, their parents, these are people that are supposed to be protecting them, and they don't. And we talked about it in the Lolita episode, that all of these adults that Laura should have been able to count on, like, you know, we're talking her parents, her boss, her therapist, all of these people should have been trusted adults, and they took advantage of her.
Yeah. So, few things pose more harm to children than those tasked to protect them.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you, Kelly Weston.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the first thing we're going to talk about is how both of these texts, so we're going to refer to The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane as one text, but both of these texts deal with adultified girls who are very vulnerable because of that state of adultification.
Yeah. I mean, because so the thing is that Rin Jacobs isn't overtly abused by her father, but she is heavily adultified. And I mean, he puts this idea on her that she can just take care of herself, even though she's just a kid. She's a child, and she's expected that because she's, you know, and we were saying earlier, most people that she meets, they make some comment about, oh, you're so this for your age. Like, so you speak so much, you know, more eloquently than children your own age. And everyone talks about how she's so grown up for her age, but that does not change the fact that she is a child.
Yeah, she's actually just turning 13 as the story begins. So she's 12 years old when her father dies and leaves her in charge of her own life.
Which is also the same age when Laura's story begins in The Secret Diary.
Yes, when Laura's, quote, adultification begins too. So I have an article,
Of course,
about structural family systems theory. This is a way of approaching psychotherapy for families, that adultified children are often groomed to be precocious by their parents. And it's this process where a child is compelled to adopt adult roles and responsibilities within the families, and this, like, a level of authority and maturity that are beyond their developmental stage. So adultification may also appear as unrealistic expectations for children to regulate their emotions and behavior as though they were more mature, or to embrace a degree of independence and self-reliance, which is premature for their age. That is textbook Rin Jacobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, she didn't ask for any of this to happen to her. And there's so much that can be said for sure about like the foster system and everything. But her father really was so sure that this was the only option, was that she be a hermit in this house, like during like prime, like puberty years where she needs to be around her peers.
Yeah.
She needs to have a community. She needs people that she can talk to as she's going through all of the stuff that a 13-year-old girl is going through.
Yes.
And he completely isolated her because he said that she could handle it.
And what Indigo's saying, again, these are textbook definitions of the symptoms of adultification in children. Isolation and loneliness, lack of socialization, emotional and behavioral problems, difficulty in trusting others, feeling overwhelmed and undervalued. Even though this is written in the 1970s, right, where we probably don't have the language we have now around, analyzing family structures and things.
Yeah.
I mean, here it is.
Yeah, she's just expected to be so brave in a situation that no child should have to endure.
Adultification, though, interestingly, is often also called like ultimately a form of dehumanization.
It is.
Yeah, and it can lead to over-sexualization of girls, young girls, too.
Which, unfortunately, Frank Hallett is so happy to prey on.
Oh, yes, he is. Yeah. But, I mean, one of the things I have in my notes is that, like, Rin's father's adoration of her and Frank Hallett's predation on her might kind of be different sides of the same problem.
Yeah.
Her father grooms her to believe that she's special. There's no one else like her. She shouldn't go to school. She needs to just be alone here. And then Frank Hallett comes in and takes advantage of all of that.
Yeah, I mean, because when he shows up for the first time, he can't get enough of her. He's like, oh, you're so special. Oh, your hair is so pretty. And, oh, you don't have a boyfriend? No boyfriend on your birthday? Also, we should point out that in his first interaction with her, he lays a hand on her. He spanks her and laughs it off, being like, oh, you're lucky you just got away with one. Usually a birthday spank, you get one for every year.
Yeah.
He has just burst into her house unannounced, unwelcome, and touches her. Like, again, first watch through, I was just gripping the couch cushions, losing my mind with rage and fear for her.
Because Rin is so smart.
Yeah.
She's so smart. She's so able to care for herself, so independent, she's such a good problem solver. But she is no match for this adult man who will just walk into her house and do whatever he wants.
Right. And again, this is so early into this plan that her father had. She's supposed to make it until she's 16 so that that's like the point where she can start really doing a lot of stuff on her own in society. But at 13, she has to be hiding that she's living alone. And this is this moment where it's like, so is this going to be the way it's going to be for 3 years? She's just going to have to deal with horrifying people like this? I sure hope not.
Yeah. I mean, she's like a month and a half into her independence when the story begins. Yeah. So we see that like adultification leads to children not being properly protected.
Yeah, because there's no one in the house for her to jump to her defense. There's no one that can come and protect her in the way that a child needs to have. A child should have someone that, while that's happening, it should have been that her dad could have come out. Even, I mean, this can even be said about absent parents too. Because I feel like that's for sure a common way that adultification happens as well, is absent parents where they're like, well, you can just make dinner for yourself and things like that, and then it maybe gets worse and worse. But yeah, when he comes into the house, all she has is her pet rat Gordon. That's the only other living creature in that house with her, and Gordon cannot protect her. No. She could have used a Doberman. I'm going to say that right now.
I know. At least Dad could have got her a pit bull.
Yeah, right?
You know?
He could have gotten her a dog.
A rat.
A rat.
No, not going to help. So, we both have parts of the text, like, definitely ready to go.
Oh, yeah.
So, speaking of Rin being groomed to be precocious, she tells someone quite late in the book about her dad. He said that, so Rin is saying this about her father. He said that I wasn't like any other person in the world, and that some people wouldn't understand that. They wouldn't want me to be the way I was. They'd want to change me. They'd try to order me about and make me into the kind of person they wanted me to be. Earlier in the book, she tells Mrs. Hallett, her landlady, that she doesn't go to school because, quote, school interferes with my education. And the landlady replies, your father taught you to say that? And so we get the idea throughout this novel that Rin seems to, she like parrots what her father says about her, that she ought to be on her own. She should be alone, that she's better off this way.
Yeah.
But all the evidence otherwise is that she absolutely should not be.
Right. And even with her isolation from her peers, it was so easy to bookmark so many moments, because like there's a scene where she is on a bus and there are girls her age and they're laughing and giggling, these two friends, and in the book it says, Rin told herself if this was what having a friend meant, it was a waste of time. It was silly. But then as soon as the girls get off the bus, she runs over to where they were sitting and sees that they left a magazine, like a teenager magazine, with like, you know, like a singer on the front, like a cute boy. And she starts flipping through it and she thinks to herself that the boy is cute. Like, this is something that a normal teenage girl should have the opportunity to do, is to read these, you know, like, you know, essentially we're looking at like a teen Vogue or something. Yeah. And she should be able to look at this with girls her age and think, oh yeah, isn't he so cute?
Yeah.
She shouldn't have to think to herself, I don't want this. That's just silly. I wouldn't want that.
I just want to go back to reading Emily Dickinson.
Yeah.
Like, and no shade to Emily Dickinson.
No.
But this poor 13-year-old girl, right? A little later in the book, it's a similar scene where she sees other kids. And I know we both noted this page.
Did.
Yeah. So these kids have just gone to a game. The Wildcats are their team. And it says, they were loud and happy and young together with nothing in the world to worry about. And there's Rin watching them, and it says she felt desolate and terribly alone. Those happy kids in the car, did they ever feel alone and helpless? Why should they? They had families, they had friends. If one of them was scared to death, he always had someone to turn to talk with. Ugh.
And the thing is, another part of that scene is that they wave to her, and she reaches up her hand to wave, but then she pulls it back down.
Yeah.
It's like as if she's saying to herself, no, I can't be one of them. She's so forcibly removed from that kind of experience.
Because her father has coached her to believe that she is superior to it.
Yeah.
And so we see her struggling in the novel to almost tell herself that she prefers this isolation.
Right.
That this is what she's choosing, but it has been chosen for her.
Right. And she isn't given the opportunity to be known by her peers, because she's not going to school.
Right.
She has no way to get to meet them. And even if she did, she'd have to try to hide this whole part of her life, lest she be taken into like the foster care system or something, which you know, is not really an option for her based on what her father has groomed her to believe.
Right. So, you know, we have this poor isolated girl. So she's like isolated physically down the lane, right? She's down this lane.
Yeah, her house is like described as quite far off the path.
And she's isolated socially and emotionally.
Yeah.
Right. So this is our character, you know, poor little Rin. We see a lot of reflections in Laura Palmer.
Yeah, especially in The Secret Diary, when we really get to see Laura's inner thoughts. We also made some notes here. There's one part where Laura says, "Do you want to know the part that frightens me most? The only thing people think about me right now is that I am going through my adolescence. everyone still sees the smiling Laura Palmer, the girl with the perfect grades and perfect hair and perfect little fingers that want to sometimes late at night go into the mirror to strangle the daydreaming troublemaker I see in the reflection.
Ugh,
which is such a
that.
heartbreaking line.
Yeah.
She's saying that she hates herself, that no one sees her, that she feels so isolated because of what Bob has been putting her through.
And her dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Her Bob and spoiler, Leland.
Yeah.
We did say this was going to be
All the
spoilers.
all the spoilers. Yeah. I mean, I think the part, and we both made this note independently again in the Secret Diary, this particular passage, that this is when she's in despair too, that Donna doesn't understand her.
Yeah.
So even her best friend, she feels, cannot inhabit the space that she's in with her. That's so similar to Rin feeling so isolated from her peers.
Right.
You know?
And she talks about how she when she's listening to Donna talk about her ideas of romance and her, future and adulthood and things like that, she's hearing this and thinking to herself, I can never have that. I'm not like you. Maybe that could have been me. If these things didn't happen to me, I could also just be skipping through the forest. But that cannot be me anymore.
Right. So although Laura's adultification at the hands of her father is far worse than
much more
Rin,
violent.
Yeah, much more violent. We could argue that Rin's father is coming from a well-intentioned place to some extent.
Yeah.
Obviously, Leland is not.
Yeah, definitely not.
But, they have some similar impacts that both adultification processes leave these girls very, very isolated from other girls their age and like missing out on really important emotional, social, developmental experiences.
And that really affects the ways that they connect with other people. It ruins the way that they can connect with their peers because they don't know how to properly do that.
No, that's true. And doesn't it make them then more vulnerable to adults? So because they can't connect with their peers, they feel somehow more connected to adults, and then those adults are there waiting to prey on them or to abuse them.
And we think about that with Audrey for sure.
Yes.
In the way that she is so isolated. And we see that in the Secret Diary too, that her father, like very blatantly, repeatedly chooses Laura over her in such a way that Audrey feels so left out. And it creates this rift between them too.
Between Laura and Audrey? Yeah.
And we see too we were talking about how there's one of her sign-offs, Laura's sign-offs in the Secret Diary. She signs off to her diary, "Thank you for listening to me." She's saying this to a journal.
Yeah.
This is who she has to listen to her. And then it reminded us of the scene where Coop is talking to Audrey and she says, "Thank you for talking to me."
Yeah.
Because no one this is why she does all of these things to try to get attention is because she just wants to be noticed.
She just wants to be seen.
She wants to be seen. She wants to have somebody to talk to. And Laura does too. And Rin does too.
Desperately. So we have these very, very lonely young girls, right?
And their situations are sort of different. They're adultified in these different ways. And, and we talk about like Audrey almost kind of wants to be adultified. She tries to sort of throw herself at Coop.
Yeah.
She wants to be an agent. She wants to impress everybody. She wants to be like, I can do it. I can be a businesswoman. I can do this stuff. And I can't help but wonder if it's because she's comparing herself to Laura with the way that her dad is throwing himself at Laura. And she's just like, can I please get noticed? Because she doesn't really realize until, unfortunately, that horrible scene at One-Eyed Jack's.
Oh, yeah.
That the whole situation is that...
Was that a sneezing cat?
That was a sneezing cat. Well, it was actually more of like a quack. But...
a quacking cat.
Pardon, Theo. But I think, in that moment, she really realizes that all of this love that Laura was getting from her father is not at all the type of love that Audrey wants from her father. She completely misunderstood that.
Yeah,
Her
yeah.
dad giving Laura a pony, you know, the thing that like every little girl talks about, dreaming about wanting a pony and stuff, and Laura gets it from her dad. But it is not the kind of attention she actually wants when
Yeah.
she's faced with it. When she realizes, she goes, oh, this is horrifying.
Yeah. I mean, to back up, because I think this is so great. Laura and Rin are both forcibly adultified,
Yes.
right? At age
Yes.
12 by their fathers. When we meet Audrey Horne in Twin Peaks, what is she, 18?
I think so.
17?
I want to say 17.
Yeah. But she's, I think in the pilot, Audrey is, even up until like maybe episode 2, 3, like depending on how we're counting, has a very childlike charm.
Oh, yes.
You know, like
the saddle shoes.
Those saddle shoes, and even her sticking the pencil into the styrofoam cup. Her like getting the Norwegians to leave.
Yeah, my friend. Oh, it's so dramatic. But again,
She'd
just
been murdered.
She just wants attention so badly. She just wants someone to notice her.
Yeah, and she.
But it is very childlike.
It is. When she, like, even her dreaminess, like when she's in the double R and plays the music and dances, that's like a childlike kind of abandon.
Yeah.
To just, like, stand up in the middle of the restaurant and dance.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Most adults would be like, this would be so embarrassing if I did this. Even if I want to do this, I won't because it's
Right.
embarrassing.
And even, like, Donna and her parents kind of look at each other like, what's happening here?
Okay.
Yeah. So there is something about Audrey, and that is absolutely her charm, right?
Yes.
We love this about her.
Yes.
But
And we want to protect her.
so much. I don't have the episode number for this, but there's this interaction with her and Ben Horne. In fact, I think she's in Ben Horne's office, like dancing to music again. And he comes in and they interact, and he says to her, Laura died 2 days ago. I lost you years ago. And how old is Audrey there?
Right.
What, 17 or 18?
Yeah,
So
gotta
if he,
be.
quote, lost her years ago, what did he give up on her when she was 14?
Right?
13? Like,
And it's like, why? What did you want her to do?
who did you want her to be?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not like you gave her any opportunity to grow. You just decided to neglect her.
Yeah. You just decided to ignore her. I mean, look at the dinner scene when Jerry comes in with the baguettes, right?
Yeah.
Like, Audrey's just sitting there like she's an invisible person.
Right. Which
You know?
she should never be invisible.
Audrey should be center stage at all times.
Yes.
Like she is in our hearts. So, to go back to what you said, Indigo, that Audrey pursues adultification, maybe pursuing her dad's love or
Yeah.
attention. If Laura can get this,
Right.
right? Then
And she thinks to herself, what did Laura do? What can I do to, like, how can I act like Laura? How can I do these things that Laura was doing and get this attention that I so deeply crave, to get this notice from my father in the way that I've been snubbed no matter how hard I've tried.
Right, right. So basically, the only way she can do it maybe is to. Now, she's a lot older than they are, right? She is technically right on the verge of adulthood, at
Yeah.
least in terms of age.
Right.
But there is something very, very childlike still about Audrey.
Yes.
Yeah. So, So then we have her sort of pursuing Cooper, right?
Yes.
Sort of pursuing Cooper. I
Showing up in
understated
his
that.
bed.
Yes. So she shows up in his bed, of course, and it's only because Cooper is Cooper
Yeah.
that she's not victimized
Right.
in this adultified vulnerability.
Like, we're so lucky that she went for one of the only good men in her life. And again, like, it's that thank you for talking to me. She just wanted to be seen. She wanted someone to, like, actually care, to hear what's going through her head, to hear her thoughts. And she's just been craving that.
Yeah.
And he gives it to her.
He says, what you need right now is a friend.
And she does. She
Yeah.
so deeply needs a friend.
Yeah. So I mean, I wasn't watching Twin Peaks back when it was first on, but I've heard, right, that there was lots of like people shipping Audrey and Cooper.
Yeah.
You know, watching it in the 21st century, I am so glad they never went there
Yeah.
with that plot line.
It's one of those things where I think definitely when I was first watching it, I saw a lot of myself in Audrey, and I was, of course, charmed by Coop. So I was like, I wonder if this will happen, and then I can just mentally pretend that I'm her and live vicariously through her. And then they were like, no. And I was like, wait, he's even better?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm even more in love with him?
Yes, I agree. I think it makes their relationship even more interesting, their dynamic, and in his character.
Yeah.
Right?
And then we get Annie, who's so lovely and
yes.
underrated. People have such terrible opinions of her, of that she's come in to ruin this attachment between Audrey and Coop. But like, I also see so much of myself in Annie.
Yeah.
So then
Yeah.
I was like, well, I can still have these lovely little daydreams, can't I?
I love how much of this is all about you living vicariously through our female characters.
I just love them.
So, okay, so she offers herself to Cooper, right? Like, he protects her where he could victimize her.
Yeah.
You know, he has every opportunity, and instead he is just Cooper in that moment.
Yeah.
But then she takes this other tact, right? She's going to impress him by being his equal. She will. So he won't have her as a lover, but maybe she can investigate with him.
Yes, she can become an agent.
She'll become an agent. Yeah.
Just like her special agent.
Yes, yes. So she shows herself, you know, again, going back to our novel, she is very clever. Yeah. She's very daring. She takes on a very mature adult role by, like, going to Horn's department store.
Yes.
Bribing, what's his face? The manager.
Yeah. I mean, bribing also kind of threatening a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
you know.
very much so. Yeah. Bribing's probably the wrong word.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to say you did this to me. And,
right. Kind of,
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's that word? Kind of coercion, a little bit. She's Audrey Horn and she gets what she wants.
But then she very quickly gets in way too deep.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Which, when we were kind of talking about this, is how I can see that connection of the little girl who lived down the lane.
Yes.
She enters into this situation where she is adultified and is trying to act beyond her years. But at the end of the day, she is not in a place or a position where this is a safe thing for her.
Right.
She has no one to protect her. And I think that, obviously when she and Charlie are having this conversation, she's an adult.
Oh, Audrey and Charlie.
Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if we think about sort of the history of her actions, you know, she is often getting in over her head by trying to get into situations where she's acting beyond her years, whether it's to impress people, whether it's just to feel better about herself. Mm-hmm. And she's about to, again, in that scene, enter into a situation that maybe is a bit dangerous.
In the return.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
And he brings that up.
Yeah.
Well, she technically brings it up.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, gosh, now that you're saying this, like, Audrey's path throughout Twin Peaks is a very unprotected girl.
Yeah.
Woman, and then woman.
Yeah.
You know, because we really, aside from Cooper, who ultimately, as a doppelganger, victimizes her, Audrey's story is one of being extremely vulnerable and unprotected.
Yeah. It's fraught with it.
Yeah.
And the thing is that it's, again, there's so many situations where, how that quote was saying, like these adults that should be tasked with her protection.
Yes.
They are not doing their jobs.
Yeah.
Her father, admittedly not knowing that it's her, almost tries to rape her.
Yes.
And the whole point is because it's never He's done this to plenty of girls her age.
I know. He has. Like, he is a serial predator on other high school girls.
Yeah.
Right? He recruits them to the perfume counter. He
Right.
grooms them. We see that whole, like, process of,
Right.
oh, you're so pretty. You're, ugh. And then he patronizes them, in quotation marks.
Right.
Oh, where's the new girl?
Right, because it's not even like he's just showing up at a club and there happen to be underage girls there.
Right.
He is a part of this process
Yes.
of getting them into it.
He's like the head of the process.
Yeah.
This is all his game.
This is his disgusting little den.
Gosh, yeah. Ben Horn. I mean, he has a
And
redemption
Audrey
arc.
doesn't
but
know.
No.
She gets herself into this situation thinking that in a way, a part of it has to be her hoping to impress her dad.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's faced with this horribly dark side of him.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. I think that when she takes off that mask
Yeah.
after Ben Horn leaves the room, the look on her face,
It's so heartbreaking.
and it says so much. I mean, Sherilyn Fenn as an actress, I've got endless amazing things to say
Yes.
about her, but what she conveys with that facial expression, the hurt, the disappointment,
Something has died in her.
something has died in her. Childhood. No.
Any feeling of safety around her father.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
All these years of trying to get his attention, trying to be Laura to him.
Uh-huh.
And then this happens.
She has seen what it means to be Laura to him, and how he looks at her and treats her. Ugh.
Because when they were kids, it was just, why are you giving... Because Laura says that she hears about them having this argument where...
This is in the Secret Diary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where Audrey and her father are fighting because he gave a huge gift to an entirely different girl, not his own child.
A pony.
A pony is a huge deal.
Yeah. Poor Audrey. Even when you see the picture on Ben Horn's desk,
I know.
it's Audrey and Laura.
Right.
Like,
Are you kidding me? Show some respect.
yeah. Then, as season 2 goes on, like, Audrey continues to take on adult roles. Like, she seems to quickly forgive Ben Horn, or at least she resigns herself to,
Yeah.
he's still her father. She's going to, like, take an interest in the business, and she's
Right.
going to, so she really does still actively pursue that adultification. She's going to chain herself to the bank vault.
Right. Well, I mean, I think the thing is, too, that there's almost this idea of when you're a kid and you look at adults and you think they must have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
They must know how to fix everything.
Mm-hmm.
All these sorts of things. And I can't help but wonder if there was this thought process she went through of, well, if I can just be an adult, if I can just grow up, then I can get out of this situation. I can get myself a life. I can pull something together for myself. I can impress people still.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Audrey.
Oh, Audrey.
So I think that's our first point of comparison, right? Do you think there's anything we want to say about adultification of these girl characters and their vulnerability because of that? Do you think we've covered it?
I think we've covered the vulnerability to
Yeah.
this extent.
Yeah. So this is a small, we don't have a lot of notes on this, but in both texts, so in both Twin Peaks and in The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane, we have this society is knowingly harboring the predator.
Yeah.
The predators are socially prominent people who are protected. So they aren't, Bob it appears as a drifter. He's an outsider. He's a monster. But yeah, Bob is not the real monster, right?
No.
It's Leland.
Right. And the thing is that Ben and Leland are in positions of power. They've got money. And that's often, honestly, how we see these sort of predators in real life is like, you constantly hear stories about celebrities and government officials that are, committing these kinds of horrible acts because they have the money and power to cover it up.
I was raised Catholic.
Yeah, and Hallett, our predator in the book, his mother is one of the most rich and powerful people in their town.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
she just covers it up. She pays off the police.
Yes. Basically, he is untouchable, even though the mother, 100% knows what he's doing. She shows up to Rin's house to basically warn her.
Yeah.
Like, you better not let my son in here again.
Right.
As if it's a 13-year-old child's responsibility.
And Rin even points that out. She's like, why don't you tell? Because it's basically Mrs. Hallett is like, oh, my son came by here. Well, the next time you better not let him in. And she's like, why don't you tell him not to come here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, why is it on this little girl to have to fend off this man who's much larger than her, probably much stronger than her, and she's supposed to and there's a part where she mentions that he's going to be able to get in after his mother dies, after she kills his mother.
Rin does, yeah.
That he's going to be able to get in because her real estate office has keys to the house. Even if Rin tried to block the door against him, he has a key.
Yeah.
So even if it's a matter of maybe she's strong enough to hold the door against him as he's trying to barge in, he'll just unlock it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which he does, ultimately. Yeah. Okay.
Horrifying.
Yeah. Yes. If you want to watch this movie, just be prepared to grip the couch cushions like Indigo did.
You will be. I think I told Hilary afterwards, I was like, honestly, it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. It's excellently done. The acting is incredible. The story is so complex. However, I don't know if I could ever handle watching it again.
Yes, I watched it once for this episode, obviously, and though usually I'll want to go back and rewatch, and I didn't want to.
It's so deeply it really got the fight or flight really going. My heart was pounding so hard. Even more than Lolita, I think.
Film Lolita?
Well, definitely the film Lolita, because it's kind of goofy, but we were talking about the book is so horrifying.
Sure.
But I think that it's so aggressive, the ways that he's constantly barreling in, and he is psychotic.
Yeah.
He is so chaotic and strange and terrifying.
Yes. Okay, so imagine Frank Booth, but instead of Dorothy Valens is a 13-year-old Jodie Foster.
Right, which it's horrifying enough when he's doing it to a grown woman.
Yes.
Imagine a little girl who is in a house by herself.
Yeah.
She has no one that can come and protect her. She doesn't have a Jeffrey.
No. And Jodie Foster, I love that they styled her very much as a little girl.
Yes,
in this
very
too.
much.
Because
her hair is frizzy.
Yeah.
They did the chipped tooth, which is in the book.
Yeah, she dresses like a little girl. Her feet are dirty. I noticed that. She really does genuinely look like a girl her age.
Right.
And the reason I think that's noteworthy is this is the same year as Taxi Driver, when of course she is styled, she's obviously still very young, but to look as though she's trying to appear older.
Right.
In Taxi Driver. But yeah, so I think our next point on the comparisons between these is a pretty profound one, and this one will expand beyond Lara and Audrey too a little bit, and that's this contrast that both texts draw between sweet age-appropriate relationships and the utter repulsiveness of child predation. Right? I think both texts have these very endearing relationships that make the contrast so vivid, so viscerally repulsive.
Yeah.
When we have these predators coming in, it's almost as if they are usurping the place that these sweet, age-appropriate, ending in all these cases they're boys, should be, right?
Yeah. And they're making an aggressive effort to isolate them from these boys. Like in Lolita, she doesn't even really get that chance.
Yeah.
But because Humbert swoops in every time anybody gets close. But in these situations, they're able to see what it could be like, which is so heartbreaking because it's like they see the comparison of, I could have this person my age. This is what it should be like.
Right.
I should be able to have this experience and not this horrifying, traumatizing one.
Yes, yes. And so it makes the horror and trauma all the more vivid.
Yeah.
You know, because it's contrasted.
Right.
With the sweetness of what could/should be.
Yeah, and you were saying like even the physical descriptions.
Yes.
Because it's when we first meet Frank Hallett, the way she describes him is so repulsive. He's like very red and
fleshy,
and he's got these like drooly big red lips and stuff, and wet watery eyes, things like that. But when she meets Mario for the first time,
yes, and so. Because we did the synopsis a while ago now.
Yes.
Mario he's a little older than Rin.
Yeah, I think he's like 16.
Yeah. And,
but still much more age appropriate.
We have no problem with Mario. We love
so
Mario.
sweet.
Yes. Mario could be a man of Twin Peaks.
Yes,
he's
he
so
absolutely could.
So like they have this very sweet relationship.
Yeah.
It's really, really beautiful.
He literally buries bodies for her.
Yeah.
He is so devoted to her. But when she first meets him, this is after she's had that interaction on the bus with those girls her age.
Yes.
And so she's seen that magazine and looked at this, like pop star boy or something. And when she opens the door and sees him, she thinks about how handsome he is and how he reminds her of this like teen heartthrob.
Yeah.
And she like describes, she's like, he's kind of like, like impish looking. He's got sort of like an elf-like quality to him. And she's just so delighted by him. And he's so sweet. And he's not trying to make any moves on her.
No.
That's a big thing too, is he's just like, hi, I'm here to pick up this car. And she's like, okay. And he's like, yeah, so like, the keys, he reaches out his hand and there's this moment where she's like, what is he reaching for? And he's like, the keys? She's just so immediately charmed by him because she should be. She should have a crush her age, and she does.
Yeah, it's a complete... And even though this is the 1970s and Rin is only 13, the novel is not at all prudish about her relationship with Mario.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Like they have a sexual relationship, but it's not presented in any way except very sweet, very wholesome. Yeah, there's no implication at all that there's anything wrong with this relationship.
No, he deeply wants to protect her, and help her in any way that he can, even if that includes hiding her bodies.
Yeah, we don't mean figuratively hiding his body, the
Actual
bodies.
bodies. She needs help. She needs help. They're heavy. I mean, this is how they meet, is that he shows up to basically she's called like a mechanic to take care of this, and he's the boy that is sent to come drive away the car of this woman she's just murdered to sort of hide it away, so it's not right in front of her house, because that would bring up a lot of questions. And and then from there they start to get to know each other, and he learns what's going on, and he's just like, okay, like, what do you need?
He is a delightful character.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, poor Mario gets pneumonia from burying all those bodies in the rain.
Yeah.
And she goes to visit them in the hospital. It's so sad.
It's heartbreaking.
And then at the very end of the book, she comes home and she hears noises in her house.
I hated this scene.
Yeah,
I think I cried.
She goes to investigate, and then she sees Mario in her house, right? He's there. He's in his...
He's got a magician
He's in his
outfit.
magician's outfit, because he does, like, He's a magician for kids' birthday parties. The magician longs to see.
Very Lynch, very Lynch.
Anyway, so she's like, oh, it's you. Oh, this was just a joke you played on me, like
And she
pretending
gets
you were
so
sick.
hopeful.
She's so happy to see him. She is unable to smother her joy. She bursts into giggles and runs forward. I'm reading this from the book. It says, with a kind of wild theatrical gesture that capes and walking sticks inspire, the figure waited for the girl to run to his arms before he whirled around to face her. This was not Mario's bright little face, sparkling with black eyes and joyous smile, but the beefy red face and thick-lipped grin of Frank Hallett. So here we have Frank Hallett literally in the place that Mario should be.
I'm like nauseous and tearful right now just thinking about it. It's such a horrifying moment because it gives her this false hope. Because I was just beside myself during the scene when she is in the hospital with him, because especially in the film, Jodie Foster is just such an incredible actress. And it's so heartbreaking watching her. She's just breaking down and saying, you know, like, I thought I could do this. I thought I could do this by myself, but my father was wrong. I can't. I need help. I can't be alone like this. I didn't know how lonely I was until you came into my life.
Yeah.
And so she has this absolutely heart-wrenching moment, this realization of how alone she is in the world. If anything happens to him, she gets home. She thinks, oh, thank God he's okay. Thank God it was just a silly little prank. And it is the worst man on the planet.
Yeah. And he's in Mario's clothes,
Which is so disgusting, and disrespectful.
It's like he is physically inserting himself in the place that Mario should be in her life. He is there in Mario's clothes, and he's like, and this is where Frank traps her. This is at the end of, again, we're spoiling it. Frank traps her and like, you're mine now.
Yeah.
And here's how it's going to be.
It's so horrifying. He leaves no room for any. He's like, here is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
We are going to live together here in this house. You're mine.
Yes.
It is so possessive and so horrifying.
And he tells her he's going to control every aspect of her life.
Yeah.
From now on. He like, you better remember how I take my tea.
Yeah.
She's using the word biscuit because she's English, and he's like, they're called cookies. Get it right. Like, he's going to control her language.
Right.
And this is minor. I mean, because we're talking about...
He obviously has much more horrifying plans for her than how he takes his tea.
He's going to sexually enslave her.
Yes.
That's what's going to happen here. Yeah, so we have Frank in Mario's place here.
Yeah.
That's very much what we see with Laura and Bobby and James versus Leland/Bob too.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we look at, especially like in The Secret Diary, when we first start seeing Laura's interactions with Bobby and they're building up this relationship, we see her also like battling internally with how she's going to present herself to Bobby, especially for their first time. And we had kind of pulled that passage, that chapter. There's this line where Laura says, but I had to let him think I was the 14-year-old I appear to be. She doesn't even see herself as a child anymore. She just says, I know I look like I'm a 14-year-old, but she's not anymore.
Yeah.
That innocence and childhood has been taken away from her in a gruesome way.
She even describes when she and Bobby first make love, right? She describes his reaction and then what she does to him as a response. So in case our readers want to find it, it's August 3rd, 1986. She says, from Bobby's mouth came slowly small words of love, then confessions, soon after promises of loyalty and happiness forever. Laura, I can't let you hear this. Just watch his lips move. Do not listen. I told myself over and over, but Bobby meant it. And then she goes on a little later to say, I knew he had planned this, but the Laura who loved him back, the young girl who so desperately hoped he would come after her when the time was right, cannot come out to play. She is inside, resting, deep inside, cradled in the braver half. I'll keep him with me, save him for her, when it is safe for her to come back. But these words of love are too real, too innocent. This boy, so young, is merely a messenger to the Lara that is living here now. Ugh, poor Lara.
I know. I mean, the secret diary on the whole, it's just so heartbreaking to see how she disassociates.
Yeah.
From her body, from herself, from her life.
But it's the idea, too, that the Lara who loves Bobby should be the whole Lara. That's the Lara she deserves to be.
Yeah.
But instead, because her dad has put himself in the place that Bobby should be in her life, or any boy her age.
Yeah, and we talked about that a bit in the Lolita episode as well, like the interactions that she has with him when he gets very possessive and aggressive when it comes to her love life, because he, even, you know, the ways that he tries to separate himself from Bob, it's so wrong, because it's like, all right, Leland, then what were you doing in this moment?
What was all that? And Fire Walk with Me.
Yeah. Right. What were all these horrifying scenes, Leland?
I think instead of David Lynch interviewing Leland Palmer,
I think it should be us, and we'll come with guns.
Did you just snort? I did. I'm leaving that in.
Yes, please.
Anyway, so I think that's very similar to Rin's situation with Mario and Hallett, that we have adult men usurping the age-appropriate boy in these girls' lives, and it causes them so much. You know, we see Rin just at the very beginning of this. Well, we'll talk about how this situation ends. Yeah. But we see the long-term effects of it with Lara.
Absolutely. I mean, because that's part of it too, that I remember us talking about. This is the beginning. Yeah. This is 1 month in or so, and she's got 3 years of this, and just until she's 16, which is still not an adult. No, but the whole point is really just that at 16 she can start, like, I think it's like opening a bank account and things like that more so than she can at 13. So like, we're looking at, for the next 3 years, what's going to happen to her? We don't know. We know what happened to Laura. It was not good.
Right.
So we deeply fear for Rin. We saw what happened to Lolita. Yeah. We deeply fear for these girls.
Yes, definitely. Do we see something similar with Audrey at all?
Yeah, I think, you know...
John Justice Wheeler? Like Audrey and her... Because, like, she has that love with John. I mean, it's awkward, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But she has that relationship with John Justice Wheeler. Yeah. And then it's basically within a couple of days at most that Doppel Cooper comes out of the lodge, presumably rapes her. She gets pregnant with Richard Horne. So, again, it's like poor Audrey, right? Like, what could be this sweet romance is then, you know, immediately replaced. And then the next thing we know about Audrey is she's living with Charlie.
I know.
In whatever is going on in the return.
Right. So, and it's another situation where it's like, this was a girl that we loved so much. Yeah. And we wanted so deeply for her to have this much brighter future. We wanted her to have so much more. And I mean, I think, I don't know about you, but I remember the first time that I finished season 2, I was just like, what?
Yeah, she better not be dead.
I know. Yeah. And then we just had to sit with that for, well, I mean, at least I guess for me, I think I had to sit with it for like a year or two before the return came out. And you were able to at least
watch it. How about these
it.
people who had to wait 25 years? Like,
my God.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're saints.
You're champions.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, when I rewatched the Charlie and Audrey scenes, partially in preparation for this episode, but just because I like them. Yeah. When Eddie Vedder sings that Running Out of Sand, I hear those lyrics for Audrey. Yeah. You know? And it's this idea of like what I could have been. I'll never have the chance. Like, it'll never come again. It's, Audrey. In some ways, this is a similar story to what happens to Laura, what happens to Rin.
Yeah.
You know, what she could have had is then violently taken from her.
Yes.
By a predator.
Yeah.
Okay, the final one is a little more figurative, I guess.
Yeah, but I think that
But to me,
there's a lot
it's-
of chatter in the community that I think a lot of people agree.
I think so too. So in part 18, the girl and the boy.
And the frog moth.
And the frog moth, yeah. So, I mean, that girl and boy walking home from their little date.
It's so incredibly sweet. It's so tender.
Yes, yes.
And that's, again, what we wish for these girls. This is what they should be experiencing.
So we have this very sweet, age-appropriate relationship on every level, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's adorable conversation, the little kiss.
Right.
And
she goes to bed
Yeah.
so, like, just her heart is so full. She's so at peace.
yes. I mean, haven't we been there?
Right.
I feel like
You get home from the date and you're just like,
you are beside yourself. She's sitting there in her little nightgown by the open window,
Yeah.
listening to a love song on the radio. And I mean, it's so relatable. It's such a wonderful moment. That first love, that first kiss,
Right.
just a beautiful, tender moment.
yeah,
And then
just this
disgusting. I mean, love the disgustingness of the frog moth.
Yeah.
You know, production wise, it's
Yes,
amazing.
production. I was
Production-wise.
like,
I'm sorry.
I gave a
Sorry.
skeptical look.
No, it's a disgustingly wonderful creation.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
It looks rather like Hallett.
yes, I mean the
It's
fleshiness,
disgusting,
the-
fleshy.
and so it's not a stretch to see this as a visual metaphor for rape.
Yeah. I mean, it enters in this slimy, kind of disgusting way. Even just the way it moves into the room, and then to enter her.
Yeah. Yeah.
No permission. No.
Yes.
After this beautiful experience, heartfelt experience, and then something disgusting entering her.
Yeah. It is just, it's like Frank Hallett showing up there in Mario's hat and cloak.
Yeah.
You know, it's where this lovely thing should be, this
Right.
age-appropriate, really beautiful thing. And then if we think that's Sarah Palmer, right?
Yeah. Then
That's-
it's just this cycle of abuse.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. The other thing I think is quite interesting is that little girl literally lives down a lane.
Yeah. Also that.
I think that Lynch's portrayal of these relationships is just unambiguously grotesque.
Yeah.
You know, and the resulting trauma of this, he really gets it.
Yeah.
Like, I think that Lynch really understands, or at least portrays sexual violence as uniquely and maybe supremely destructive.
Yes. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's not even just in Twin Peaks. It's in these movies as well.
Yeah.
This is something that we repeatedly see as something that devastates lives.
Yeah. And that it devastates all the lives around them in a way too, or it has a much wider circle of destructiveness.
I mean, even we talked about earlier, I don't think yet in the podcast, but when you and I were sort of checking our notes about when Bobby and Laura are together for the first time.
Yeah.
And how he cries and she laughs.
Yeah, I actually have that. It says, I was forced to do something cruel, something that would make him perhaps rethink the entire idea of Laura. I had to laugh at him hard, laugh until his eyes lost their light. To save myself, I had to laugh in the face of a boy who now may never be so honest again.
Which is just heartbreaking.
Yeah. So Laura feels forced to harm Bobby because of the harm that's been done to her.
Yeah.
So we have this last point, I guess, that Rin is told she has to do anything she must, fight them in any way she can, survive. And we see her do that.
Yeah.
She intentionally murders 2 people.
Yeah. So when we said that Mario was hiding bodies, he was certainly doing that.
Yeah. So she's killed her mom and her landlady.
Yeah.
And the third, there might be a third murder.
Yeah.
It's ambiguous in the book. So it's either a failed suicide on her part, or an intentional murder of Frank Hallett.
Yeah. We look at this like you would rather die than submit, which is such a heartbreaking point for anyone to get to.
Right.
But this is what happens. Like, again, like, is this supposed to be her life now?
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing, too, is it's like, whether or not she gets Hallett out of the way, if she is able to kill him and fight him off, what's to say that's not going to happen a year from that, you know?
Another month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even just another month could go by. Somebody hears about the little girl who lives down the lane. She lives alone. And it is all of these predators, you know, wet dream. And so maybe is it better to just die, to just give up, than keep fighting every single day?
Right.
And
it's definitely better. She seems to think it's better for her to die than to submit to Frank Hallett.
Yes, absolutely.
So, just to clarify, in case you haven't seen the movie, Rin is a master of poisons, apparently.
Yes.
What is it, potassium cyanide?
I think
or something?
so. Yeah, taste of almonds.
Taste of almonds. She says it's the cookies or biscuits.
Yes.
Sorry. So she prepares tea for them, both, and she has put the poison in her own teacup.
Yeah.
Frank Hallett, is the one who is like, I want your tea.
Yeah.
So it's not clear to us in the book or the film if Rin knew he would do that.
Right.
So she's either planning to kill herself or him.
Yeah, because we have no way of knowing if it's that she, you know, definitely knew that he was going to have this moment of trying to swap the cups, you know, perhaps assuming something's afoot, or if she just genuinely thought to herself, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I would rather die than submit to being possessed entirely by this horrible creature, this disgusting man. I mean, that's what Lara's choice is too.
Right.
Like Lara chooses death rather than being fully possessed by Bob.
Yeah, she says it repeatedly. And then in the secret diary, there's even on November 20th, 1985, she has a dream that this rat is trying to bite her foot, to chew off her foot. She says, and so in the dream, because I knew all he wanted was my foot, I bit my foot off myself. She says, I was more afraid of the rat's teeth and how much it would hurt, so I decided I would do it. I would hurt myself before he could. Even though I didn't understand why the rat wanted to hurt me, I just knew I had to do it myself or he would.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, there's kind of the common, like, cliched metaphor of, like, you know, like a dog or a wolf or a fox, like, having its foot trapped and, you know, chew your own leg to get yourself out of the trap rather than be caught. And that's what these girls are doing. They would rather die than endure this.
Yes. I know you noted this, Indigo, when we met to talk about it, that, like, whether Rin kills Hallett or dies herself in this moment, she has lost.
Yeah.
She's either dead or she's got a third body to bury now.
Right.
You know, she is a 13-year-old girl and she has killed 3 people.
Right. And again, she doesn't know if there's any future for Mario.
Yeah. And we should point out, like, Rin is not a psychopath. Like,
no, she's just terrified.
She's just terrified. Like, there's no sense that Rin is like a bad seed, kind of evil child at all.
And also, her father was the one that taught her about this, I believe, right? So it's like another aspect of his grooming. He's like, just poison people. Like, it's not like she was just like, well, I guess I'll have to poison people.
Yeah. She has basically been cornered.
Yeah.
You know, by her father's grooming and also by these adults.
Yeah. She never asked to be put in this position.
No. So, you know, she's a month and a half maybe into her independent life and she's got 3 bodies in her basement, in her garden. Is this going to be her life now? How many more bodies is it going to take? And what's the psychic toll on this little girl I mean, it is a very dark ending.
Yeah. The amount of damage that just 1 month of this kind of life has done to her.
Yeah.
You can only imagine the thoughts going through her head of how is she supposed to keep going on this way?
Yeah.
Because the future is looking incredibly bleak.
Yes. That like no good options feeling is so similar, of course, to Lara, you know, that we see them both in such a dark place. And I think if we accept that the girl in part 18 is a young Sarah Palmer, you know, certainly as Mark Frost seems to say it is. I know the actress who played that girl referred to playing the young Sarah Palmer herself. I think when we see Sarah kill the man in the bar in The Return, there is a similar feeling of like, she doesn't want to do this.
Right. It's resigned.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what I have to do.
Like the whole do anything you must, fight them any way you can, survive, that quote from Little Girl That Lives Down the Lane.
Right.
That's Sarah Palmer in this moment too. She shows up in this bar as just, she's such an ordinary looking older woman.
Yeah.
Not glamorous, not trying, doesn't engage with this man at all. And he is so aggressive and so threatening.
Yeah.
I don't know. She doesn't encourage his actions. Like she tries to warn him off. Like, do you think there's any pleasure in this? Like, do you think there's a monster in Sarah?
I think you and I have had this discussion many times where it's kind of going back and forth, because the thing is that it's one of those complex discussions too of, so kind of in the same way with Bob and Leland, where it's like, okay, so technically there's potentially this like sort of paranormal situation that you're in where you're being swayed by larger entities. And we've talked about, you know, having Twin Peaks as sort of a hellmouth because of the Black Lodge. It's just, it permeates the area.
Right.
It lends a darkness to that town that is abnormal.
I mean, Sarah does take her face off.
Yeah, so she's not quite all there. Not quite human, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, and that is a smiling entity.
Yeah.
That's there beneath that face.
Horrifically so.
Yes. The thing is, though, even if they like, we don't feel any pity for that. What does his shirt say? Truck you?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
we don't feel any pity
We're
for
just
truck
like,
you.
okay,
we're like, bye, good riddance. But I think that any victory for Sarah is really cold and dark.
Yeah,
like her life is very sad and frightening.
Right. She's still going to go home alone.
Yes,
to that dark house, to that with the haunting ceiling fan.
You know, I remember in the Diane podcast, they described Sarah Palmer's house as a lair.
Yeah.
That it's a lair, not a home.
It is not. After everything that has happened in that home, it is not anymore. And even just like the way that she inhabits it is very kind of animal-like.
Yeah.
Or
like very much.
Entity-like.
Yes. Anyway, what about Audrey? You know, how is she surviving? Do you think she's not following, obviously, the same path as Rin, Laura, or Sarah Palmer?
Yeah, but she's certainly not thriving.
No.
Again, we like, that's the whole thing too, is like, I think that a lot of people were really heartbroken by her portrayal in The Return, in that they wanted her to win. They wanted her to be thriving. They wanted beautiful things for her because we love her so much. But that's just not realistic. Not in this type of story of the little girl who lives down the lane. It's, you know, it's unfortunately the realistic aspect of it is that she's been through a lot, and so she doesn't have this incredibly bright future.
No. So, okay, that's interesting. So is the story of the little girl that lives down the lane, is it the story about these girls who are adultified, who were robbed of the opportunity to develop as normal, age-appropriate, healthy kids? We want so much for them.
Yeah.
And yet it is a dark, twisted road of destruction that they have to travel.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, this is, again, when you even just first described this concept to me for the episode, and you gave me like a quick summary of the story, I was immediately like, yeah, yep,
Yeah.
I definitely think there's a connection here.
And I think that as we've spent a month or so really diving into the text, maybe even more than we expected.
Yeah.
In terms of thematic connections and resonances between them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, especially rereading The Secret Diary, I was just finding more and more connections. Just especially also for anyone who hasn't listened to the audiobook, that's how I've been rereading it. And it is read by Cheryl Lee, and it is incredible.
Yeah, I think it should be required listening for Twin Peaks fans. You know, if you've read The Secret Diary and not listened to it, you haven't fully experienced it yet.
That's the thing, is I feel like it's an entirely different experience because she does such an excellent job of putting her entire soul and every emotion into it.
Yes.
You're just actually, it just feels like a director's cut.
Oh.
Like it just feels like additional content.
I agree. You said that, I think, that if you felt like you were just watching the show.
Yeah. Yeah, it just felt like I was just watching the show like with headphones in, but not looking at the screen.
Yeah, Cheryl Lee doesn't read it, she performs it.
Yeah.
She performs it. Well, that wraps up our episode on the little girl who lives down the lane. The next episode that we are planning is In Cold Blood. This will be an Uncanny Resonance episode, and it is Indigo's pet project.
I am so excited.
Yeah, we're both really looking forward to that discussion. Now, before then, you can hear us on Cream Corn and the Universe podcast.
We're going to be guests. Thank you for having us.
We're going on Colin's show to talk about, so appropriately, Harriet Hayward.
Yes,
Yes.
our beloved poetess.
Yes, and we kicked around the idea about doing an episode on Harriet here, but since Colin is already doing that, character by character, it's a perfect fit.
Yes, it's the perfect collab.
Yes. But in the meantime,
if you are liking what you're hearing, please rate and subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps. It really means the world to us. And you can also follow us on Instagram at Full Blossom of the Evening. I have been making that my other sort of pet project besides the In Cold Blood episode.
Yes, Indigo is in charge of our Instagram.
You will see cat pictures. So, how could you say no? But also, we're trying to post a lot of visual aids there. So we posted for the Lolita episode, we posted some picture comparisons, things like that. So it's really worth it to follow. And it makes us feel nice to see that you care.
We welcome your comments. We're excited to hear from you. You can also email us at fullblossomoftheeveningpodcast@gmail.com.
And also big news, which you will see on the Instagram if you follow us. We got stickers made of the logo. And if you would like one, please email or DM us, and we will find a way to get one to you.
Yeah. Indigo did a lovely job on our logo.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, listeners, once again for listening to The Full Blossom of the Evening. And we will sign off with...
It was Laura.
And she's come to kiss you goodbye.
Goodbye, listeners.
Goodbye, listeners.